Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're going through the books that I read in April. So I'm going to do this video a little bit differently than I've done the other videos because I had 4 DNFs this month. I'm actually just going to make a new rule on my channel that when I'm going through my monthly wrap up and I have a DNF, I'm just going to leave it at 1 sentence. Because a lot of the time when I had a DNF this month, it was purely because I wasn't vibing with the story. So I think leaving it at 1 sentence is going to wrap it up nicely. And then I can leave room for the books that I did in fact finish to give you guys a review of what I thought. So with that in mind, let's go into the video from here. So this month I read a total of 6 books. And on top of that, I DNF'd 4 books. So the amount of pages I read this month equaled out to 2,169 and my average rating was 3.92 stars. So I actually think from memory that is my best average rating over a month so far. And whether that's to do with me putting down books I wasn't enjoying at all and only reading things I was, I'm not sure. But we'll see how I go when I go into the reviews themselves and individual star ratings. Okay, so now let's get started with the books that I DNF'd this month. Again, 1 sentence each. I will let you know if there was something extra to it though, as far as where the book came from. So the first one is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I had this as my book club book for my local book club. And honestly, it just wasn't the right time for me to read this book, and I'll probably read it later on. The second book that I DNF'd was 4 Dead Queens by Astrid Schulte, and I think that this one was just, I tried it so many times and it just wasn't working, so I just had to put it down. The third book that I DNF'd was Murder Medic by E.C. Kruger. I think purely this was an ARC copy that I received and I didn't realize that it was a lit RPG, and I'm just not into lit RPGs now that I've realized that. The fourth and the last book that I DNF'd this month was The Girl King by Mimi Yu, and I think honestly that this just wasn't for me, and it had some problematic themes to it that I didn't agree with. So now getting into the books that I did in fact finish this month. The first one I picked up was Thrum by Meg Smitherman, and this jump started me into the month quite well and got me really excited for reading this month. So it's a shorter book. It's only, I think, just over 100 pages, might be 140 pages or something. So it was quite short and quick, and I really enjoyed it. It's sort of a psychological thriller / horror set in space. So the basis of it is that a character named Amy sort of wakes up from stasis and she finds that she's stranded on the edge of space and she's the only surviving member of her crew. So she sort of sends out a distress signal and she gets a response quite quickly. And she ends up being welcomed onto an alien ship. But when she gets on the ship, she realizes everything's not as it seems. And she realizes that she's hearing this sound that sounds like a deep thrum that's haunting her at all times. This book sort of had a constant feeling of dread and uneasiness that follows you throughout your reading experience. And it sort of messes with your head and leaves you wondering what is happening around her. This is very much the first thing I have read that's like this. I haven't read many psychological thrillers in general, let alone horrors. My horror books that I've read have been like 30 pages each. They're like quite short horrors. And as much as I want to expand into the genre, I haven't yet. And this was sort of my first foray properly into something like it. And I don't know why, but I liked it. Whether I like being confused or not, I'm not sure. But I really enjoyed its premise and what it was doing. And it was interesting to sort of find out certain reveals throughout such a short book that were done so well, in my opinion. It sort of ends in a way that also makes you think, like, what the heck? What just happened? Like, you sort of finish the book and you're just sitting there like, but wait, what does that mean? Does that mean this or does that mean that? Like, without spoiling anything, it's really hard. But like, it's just, it leaves you reeling. It leaves you wondering what the heck just happened, to the point that you sort of want to reread it again. And in that way, it was quite a different experience than what I've had recently with recent books that I've read. I do realize though that once I finished it, that the concept, while done well in my opinion, could have been done better. So knowing that this is the first sort of thing of its kind that I've read, I had to take a different sort of perspective on it, because it was quite a weird book. And it was sort of, I had to sit there for a bit going, did I actually like it? Or was I just hooked enough because I didn't know what was going to happen? I wasn't sure. So I did rate it a 3.5 because there was something missing that I felt could have been expanded on if it was longer. So it was, unfortunately, because of the length of the book being so short. But I do think that something like that with more of an expansive sort of idea to it might have been a little bit better for me, but it just didn't work out quite how I hoped. But I still fully enjoyed it. Like 3.5 is not something to laugh at. I did enjoy the book and I would read it again just to find out more. It was just, I think it was to do with the ending and the way that I interpreted the ending, I didn't like. So if I had have interpreted a different way, it might have been rated higher, who knows? But that's what I thought of it at the time. So yeah. The next book I read was Murder Games by James Patterson and Howard Ruffin. So the whole premise of this book is that a professor, his name's Dylan Reinhardt, he runs a class at Yale University on abnormal behavioral analysis, and a detective sort of approaches him and says that his life might be at risk because a serial killer has sent in his book with his picture on the back. I think they might have written something on it as well. So they've brought him in and he sort of helps on this case with the detective. And the whole story behind this book was that the serial killer left playing cards to hint towards the next victim on the victim's body. So it was interesting to sort of figure out what the cards might mean in the future while I was reading it as well. But it was also really enjoyable for me because I like crime shows that go into the behavioral analysis of the serial killers, whereas other ones that don't, you're sort of left like, why did they do it then? I love the idea of having an explanation for why they did it, and there may not be an explanation, but to get inside that person's head and see the twisted thoughts that they're having was really good, and I love that in crime shows. So the fact that this was sort of giving that energy was really enjoyable for me, and I really did love that experience. I will say that I think I read it faster too because the chapters are short and every single chapter ends on a cliffhanger. So I sort of got to a point where I just kept reading and I realized that I was 10 chapters later and I'm like, when did that happen? Because I just kept going. I couldn't stop. I didn't even realize the chapters were starting again because, like I said, they end on cliffhangers. You just keep reading, keep flowing. And I think that did help a lot because at the time I was still very much in book slump territory. But to have the first or the second book that I read in the month be this good for me was actually really uplifting, and because I sort of started to feel like I wasn't going to get back into reading properly at that point, and this one just pulled me out of it. I appreciated the chapters that were in the perspective of potential victims as the serial killer was sort of in a way stalking them, but like just before they get killed. That was really interesting because it sort of gave you an insight into who they were and how they sort of related to the playing card. That was interesting as well. There was, obviously it's a crime book, so there is a lot of murder, blood, all of that. There was a lot of drug use in that way as well. I did enjoy the detective that was on the case. I enjoyed her character and the fact that she sort of demanded respect and she was just good at her job. She was sort of the attitude that she's not here to tickle anyone's egos. She's there to get a job done. And I really appreciated that, and how her and the professor sort of works together was really well done. And I can see how it could expand into further books. I know when it first came out, it was meant to be a standalone, but then it got picked up as a TV show. And they changed the name to Instinct, and they had 2 more books afterwards. I have since read the blurbs for those 2 books, and I don't think I will continue it. I think that it may ruin it for me, because I think the second one goes on a different tangent, but the third one comes back around to a similar theme. And I think that rather than ruin such a good thing that I've read, I might just leave it at that. Like, if anyone watches this video and thinks that the second and third one are worth it, by all means, I'll try them. But at the moment, yeah, I enjoyed the first book so much that I don't need to taint it with anything else. I think that it's good on its own. I can see where it could expand from here, but at the moment, I don't really have an interest in it. I sort of get the idea of what his past job was that they hinted to and didn't quite explain properly. But other than that, I think it was good. I don't think I'll be watching the show though, because it stars the guy from Spy Kids, and I can't unsee that, unfortunately. The next book I read was The Knight and the Butcher Bird by Alex E. Harrow. I rated this 4.5 stars. So this was my second foray into Alex's short stories. And my first one that I read, The Seven Deaths of a Saint, I think it was called, or The Six Deaths of a Saint, something. That was really good, and I was amazed by how in 30-something pages she was able to capture the amount of tension and chemistry and emotion that you would find in a full-length book or a epic fantasy series. She just did it so well, and this was no different to me. It wasn't as epic as the other one was, but it wasn't meant to be. So there's not much I can say about it without spoiling it, because it was so short. I think it was 32 pages. I listened to it with the audio version, so I just sat there for an hour listening to that while I was sort of reading along beside it. So I was sort of immersive reading it. There's not much I can say, but it is set in a world where people turn into demons and the knights are called upon to help dispatch them. So normal people, it could be your sister, your brother, your cousin, your lover, whatever, they slowly turn into demons, and you're basically meant to hire, or you're either meant to kill them, or you're meant to hire these knights to kill them if they've gotten out of hand. And a lot of people try to hide that their relatives or lovers are these things, and it sort of delves more into that as you go. Again, I can't say much because it's so short. This specific one was a great insight into the yearning and grieving of someone who's still alive but isn't, and how we fight for the love that we know, even though they may not be the same person they initially were. I really love how Alex E. Harrow creates captivating short stories that hit hard. I love them so much. I really need to read one of her full-length books. They're just so good. The ending wasn't really shocking, because in 30 pages you can't really shock me with an ending like that, but it was something that sort of stayed with me, and I did think about it more, and it is the sort of book that I could go back and just reread quickly. 30-something pages isn't much. An hour worth of listening isn't much at all. She's an astounding writer. I just really want to get into her backlist and read all of her books and see how I go. Honestly, it was just purely amazing, and I loved it so much. The next book I read was Year One by Nora Roberts, and I rated this one 4 stars. So basically, this book starts with a man, they're on a hunting trip sort of thing with the family, and he shoots a pheasant, but he doesn't realize that then causes a sickness to start. And it sort of comes on suddenly, spreads quickly. It turns into a epidemic and then a pandemic pretty quickly. And within weeks, it sort of ends up annihilating half the world's population. And as the world's population is dying off, whether it's to the doom, which is what they called the epidemic, or whether it's to people's violence against each other, as this is happening, people are gaining powers and magic. And the people that don't have magic are starting to blame it on the people with magic and saying it's their fault. And so the good people with magic are getting hunted by the bad magic people and the people without magic. So it becomes really chaotic and unsafe. The government has crashed. There's no more government, no more law, no more order, no more electricity. It's basically the whole world has collapsed, and now we're in sort of an apocalyptic era, and we're following quite a few different characters. I think that the next 2 books in the series might have a sort of chosen one trope to get back to it. I do know that they'll probably flash forward. I think it was 12 years in the future. They're going to flash forward. I will see how they go from this one, but I did enjoy this book more than I thought I would, because I'm not normally into the apocalyptic sort of books. I'm not normally into the books that go into sort of pandemic sort of things. I'm not interested, but this one for some reason interested me more than I thought. So I did enjoy the characters. I enjoyed certain characters more than others, but I learnt to enjoy the other characters. It was easy to follow, even with all the perspectives and the different groups and the amount of people in those groups, because they sort of come together as a big group at the end. Unfortunately, that did become a little more complicated for me to keep track of, especially when there were two people with very similar names. It did start to get a little bit frustrating, but we're not in that big group for long, so it didn't really take me long to get used to it. I will say though that my favorite character didn't come in until the end, like last 5 chapters maybe, and I'm hoping he's in future books. I can see why he wouldn't be, and I can see why he would be, so I'm hoping he is there. But yeah, I enjoy the magic. It's sort of natural sort of magic, like it was always there, but it's been amplified by the epidemic. And so it's like sort of witches and fairies and elves and pixies and all of that sort of thing. And then you got the dark sort of side of it, where a lot of them were very dark. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this book. Do not go into this book if you are sensitive to sexual assault, mentions of sexual assault, murder, blood, gore, like all of these things, especially pandemic sort of things with sicknesses, especially after COVID. Don't read this if you're worried about those things. I would probably look up a better trigger warning list, because there were quite a few of them that I'm definitely forgetting some now that I've blanked out. It was quite violent, and it sort of gave a new perspective on what the world would, or what humanity would do if something like this happens in this way. Like we saw what happened with COVID. It was sort of written like that, but it was written before COVID, and it's definitely more violent than anyone was during COVID. So read at your own risk. It was really good though. I really did enjoy it. It wasn't a full 5 stars because there was something that I wasn't enjoying about certain parts of the epidemic side of it, and it was slower for me at the start because of that. But that's a personal problem for me. That's not something that everyone else might be affected by. So yeah, at the moment, 4 stars. I did really well. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I read it finally, because it had been on my shelves for I think possibly 8-9 years. So yeah, got to it eventually, and it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So the next book I read was Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mehra, and I absolutely needed this book at the time that I read it. It is so humorous. I love these books so much. I rated it 4 stars, and honestly, I stand by that rating so much. I understand that these books are not for everyone. I've seen a lot of people have issues with the humor. It is very much my humor. I love it so much. I love these books because they just have me kicking my feet, cackling. And it's just so good and so enjoyable. I probably have to rewind it back and explain to you what the first book was about, because this was a sequel. So I should probably explain what the first book was about. So the first book follows Evie Sage as much as the second book does. And her father's sick, and she's having trouble finding work in her village because her father can't earn money for them because he's too sick. So she's going to be the breadwinner for the family. And she stumbles literally across the villain in the forest, and he sort of just so happens to need an assistant, and she takes on that position. And as she's his assistant, we follow alongside her getting to know her job and her boss while uncovering secrets and causing humorous villainy throughout. And I love these books so much. I can't say anything bad about them. Yes, the writing has a little bit to be desired, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. There is no world in which you should take this book too seriously either. It's so humorous. Yes, there are some elements to the stories that are more high stakes than you would expect from just a purely humorous book, but it sort of balances itself out really well. And even when things start to get tense, Kingsley the Frog comes in and holds up his sign saying danger or oh no or uh-oh. And it's just, every time he pops up, I'm laughing so much. I will read what the back of the second book has, since I can't tell you too much about it, but I will read the back of what the second book says as far as the first paragraph, so it's not spoiling anything. So it says, Evie Sage has never been happier to be the assistant to the villain. Who would have thought that working for an outrageously handsome, bad for his brand, evil overlord would be so rewarding? Still, the business of being bad is demanding. The forces of good are annoyingly persistent. And said forbidding boss is somewhat out of evil office. I don't know if that like gives you the energy that the book is, but it's just, it's so good. I will always love these books, I think. These are the sort of books that I would want to go back and reread, and I find them so funny, and it's just so easy to read. I will say that the side characters in the second book became a lot more enjoyable than the first book, though. I was following along with their sort of personal sort of journeys as well, and their personal relationships that they were getting into, and I'm falling in love with all of them. I don't know what to tell you. They're just all so good. I will say that her little sister does get into more mischief in the second book, to the point that I was like, I don't know if we should forgive her, but then I realized that she's like 7, so maybe we should. But yeah, like, look, I love the characters, and I just love the sitcom nature of this book. Thank God she's not stopping at 3. She's going to keep going as far as I can see. So I'm very happy, and I can't wait to read the third one when it comes out this year. The last book I read this month was The Forest King's Daughter by Ellie Blake. I rated this one 4 stars as well. So this is basically about a demon boy and a forest princess. And in this world, demons are called Dracu, and the forest people are called Sylvans. So a Dracu boy and a Sylvan princess become friends as children, and they meet in secret. And the boy gifts the girl a ring that he thinks is worthless. And he soon finds out, because the demon queen and the Sylvan king pop up, and they declare war over it, because it is not, in fact, just a ring. It is a Dracu stone, I think the Dracu name it. And it gives the wearer the ability to wield light. And the last time someone wore it to wield the light, they annihilated a lot of people in the wars. So it's very much a tide turner in a war. We follow these people into 10 years later, where the forest princess is now 17, and she's training as a warrior, but also as the death ringer, which is a term for the wielder that wears the ring. So that term was warranted in the last war where the light wielder used it for death. She's sort of dealing with the pressure that her father's putting on her to succeed at using the ring in what he wants it to do, to turn the tide in this war that he's started. And she ends up getting kidnapped by the Dracu boy again, because he wants the ring back, because he's now in trouble because he gave it to her in the first place. They realize it's not going to be as easy as they thought, and he wants the ring off, but she wants to master it. So together they go into this other land, and they sort of learn about the magic of the ring and the history of the ring, and it sort of expands from there. So I really enjoyed this book more than I thought I would. I bought this book on a whim because I liked the rest of her books that I've read, and I didn't even realize this was coming out until I saw it in the shop, and I'm like, that's it, that's mine. I'm getting it. I don't care. And I'm glad I did, because it was so good. I loved the idea that in this book they've got vows that you sort of vow to the ancients, I think. If you vow something, you are then basically hooking your life to it. So if you break that vow, you're dead. You get dragged down. The ancients drag you away. Like, you're dead. So you don't want to make a vow just willy-nilly, because if you don't follow through with that vow, then you're in big trouble. So I really liked that idea, and I really enjoyed the premise of it throughout the book, when everyone kept saying, no, don't vow it. And they're like, I'm not vowing it. I wouldn't do that. And then eventually they do. But I really liked it so much. And the journey that the main female character goes on, the Sylvan princess, from the pressure from her father, and then learning from herself how she's going to expand herself, and finding herself and what she truly is and what she truly needs to be, was really interesting. And I really loved her journey into herself. And honestly, I know that the next 2 books are not following her, they're following her sisters individually, but it'll be interesting to dive back into this world and see what's happening there, because I know one of her sisters especially is very violent, and I like violent characters a lot of the time, so we'll see how that one goes. In this world, I love how whimsical and ethereal it is, and I would love to go back into it and learn more about it. It sort of draws you in, but it takes a little bit of concentration at the start. So I was a little bit slower starting it than I would have liked because I was still struggling with reading. But once I got into it, it pulled me back out, and I am now happy to say that it looks to me like my book slump might be ending. I'm not going to speak too soon, but these books that I read this month really helped me with that, and I'm really grateful for that. And I'm looking at good things within the next month. So I'm very positive about that. Okay, that was all the books I read in April. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I do in fact enjoy going through the books that I've read. And like I said, in the future, if I have DNFs, I'm just going to do one sentence, because a lot of the time I'm trying to come up with things to say about them, and there's just nothing that I want to say because I didn't enjoy the book. So until the next video, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your time. I hope you guys stick around, watch some more videos. I'd really appreciate it, because I really think that talking to more people about books is going to be really exciting, and I can't wait. So yeah, anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.